Democrat and former Little House on the Prairie actress Melissa Gilbert in November.
For over 2 decades, Melissa Gilbert stayed quiet about her relationship with Patty Duke, a woman who was once her co-star, her teacher, and in many ways, her protector. Their bond, forged through shared pain and childhood fame, was something neither of them could easily put into words. But now, at 61, Melissa is ready to break her silence. In a heartfelt reflection, she reveals the truth behind their connection, the moments of joy, the lessons learned, and the heartbreak that followed. A fairy tale, childhood, that wasn't. Melissa Gilbert's early life was far from ordinary. In her memoir, Prairie Tale, she described her childhood as layered in illusion. A story told in several versions, each one slightly different from the other. For her, life wasn't a single truth, but a mix of many realities she was still trying to understand. Her journey began in 1964. Melissa was born to parents who couldn't raise her and was soon placed for adoption. She was adopted by Barbara Crane and Paul Gilbert, who made the decision to hide the truth about her birth parents. Growing up, Melissa believed her biological mother was a prima ballerina and her father an esteemed scholar. Later, she discovered that wasn't true at all. Her mother had been a dancer, and her father a stock car racer. It was one of many surprises waiting for her down the line. When Melissa was 8 years old, her adoptive parents divorced, and her mother remarried. The new marriage didn't bring comfort or closeness. Melissa admitted she never connected with her stepfather and didn't have a warm relationship with him. Even the reasons behind her adoption felt murky. Her parents had told her they struggled with fertility, but that didn't quite add up. Her father had a daughter from a previous marriage, and her mother had conceived twice after adopting her, once ending in a miscarriage and later giving birth to Melissa's sister, Sarah. It became clear there were hidden layers to her family's story, leaving Melissa to wonder what had really been true all along. But while her family life was complicated, her professional life was already taking shape. From a very young age, Melissa was introduced to the world of television. Her parents helped her land commercial roles when she was still a toddler, and by the time she was 8, she was already appearing on major TV shows. One of her first television appearances came in 1972 on the classic Western Gunsmoke. Just a couple of years later, she was chosen for the role that would define her career. Laura Ingalls on Little House on the Prairie. Before it became a beloved television series, Little House on the Prairie began as a set of books written by Laura Ingalls Wilder between 1932 and 1943. Wilder's stories were drawn from her own life, documenting her experiences growing up in the American Midwest between 1870 and 1894. Her books painted vivid pictures of pioneer life, the struggles, the triumphs, and the spirit of a nation still finding its footing. That era was a time of bold exploration. Families, known as homesteaders, traveled west to settle the vast lands gained through the Louisiana Purchase. They left behind everything familiar, packing up wagons and venturing into wild, uncharted territory in search of new beginnings. Life was harsh, but filled with purpose. These settlers built their homes from scratch, grew their food, made their clothing, and survived through sheer willpower. While the romantic idea of pioneering often symbolized hope and opportunity, the truth was far more challenging. Isolation, illness, hunger, and the unforgiving winters made survival an everyday battle. Still, Wilder managed to capture the heart of that experience, blending the hardships with the beauty of resilience, family, and faith. Her stories resonated deeply with readers, capturing imaginations across generations. Eventually, producer Ed Friendly recognized the power in those tales. He envisioned them on television, where families could see those pioneer values come to life. With a creative team by his side, he transformed Wilder's beloved books into a TV show that would go on to become a cultural classic. And on September 11, 1974, Little House on the Prairie officially premiered, marking the start of a journey that would not only change television history, but also turn a young Melissa Gilbert into one of the most recognizable faces of her generation. What Little House didn't show you. Being a child in Hollywood can be overwhelming for anyone, and Melissa was no exception. The spotlight that made her famous also brought pressure, confusion, and pain that she would carry for years. As her fame grew, Melissa began slipping into the same dangerous patterns that had consumed so many other child actors before her, experimenting with drugs and alcohol. To outsiders, she was America's sweetheart, but behind the scenes, she was quietly struggling to hold it all together. Part of that pain stemmed from a devastating loss early in her life. When Melissa was just 11 years old, her adoptive father died by suicide, but she didn't know the truth at the time. Her family told her he had suffered a stroke, hiding the real cause of his death to protect her. It wasn't until much later that she learned what had really happened. Her father, a World War II veteran, had been enduring unbearable pain, both physical and emotional, which ultimately led him to take his own life. That loss left a deep void. Melissa often said she spent her childhood searching for the father figure she had lost. And then she met Michael Landon. When she was cast as Laura Ingalls on Little House on the Prairie, Michael wasn't just her on-screen pa. He became that missing father figure in real life. Their bond was close, almost familial. He guided her, looked out for her, and filled that emotional space her real father had left behind. But as she grew older, Melissa began to see cracks in that idealized image. Michael, she later admitted, often drank vodka from his coffee cup on set, something she hadn't noticed as a child. That memory stuck with her, and she came to realize it shaped the kind of men she was drawn to later in life. Their relationship took a painful turn when Michael left his wife for another woman, a makeup artist from the show. For Melissa, who had already lived through her parents' divorce, this felt like betrayal all over again. The man she had idolized as a moral anchor had suddenly disappointed her. Hurt and angry, she cut off all contact with him, ending what had once been one of the most important relationships of her young life. Still, not every behind-the-scenes story from Little House on the Prairie was filled with heartbreak. One of the sweetest surprises was the friendship between Melissa and Allison Arngrim, who played her on-screen rival, Nellie Oleson. On the show, Laura and Nellie couldn't stand each other. Their feuds were legendary. But off-camera, they were inseparable. The two shared sleepovers, laughed through long shooting days, and formed a genuine friendship that lasted for years. It was a true testament to their talent. They could deliver intense, dramatic performances on set while staying close friends in real life. But the same couldn't be said for everyone on the show. As close-knit as the Little House cast seemed, there were plenty of tensions behind the scenes. Melissa had her share of conflicts, especially with her co-star Shannon Doherty, who joined the cast later as Jenny Wilder. Shannon, who was younger at the time, reportedly idolized Melissa and followed her everywhere on set, mimicking her every move. What may have seemed like admiration quickly turned into irritation, and Melissa found herself growing increasingly frustrated. Once filming wrapped, she moved on and left that tension behind. However, her longest and most well-known feud was with another castmate, Melissa Sue Anderson, who played Mary Ingalls. On screen, they were loving sisters. Off-screen, the story was completely different. The two never got along, and their animosity lingered for years after the show ended. No one ever pinpointed the exact reason for the rift, but it was clear that the distance between them ran deep. In her memoir, Prairie, Melissa Gilbert didn't hold back, describing Anderson as cold and unfriendly. Still, the other side of the story has never been told. Melissa Sue Anderson has largely stayed quiet about the feud, leaving the truth somewhere in between. What is known, though, is that several other cast members shared similar experiences, describing Anderson as distant and hard to connect with. Some have speculated that her behavior came from being sheltered and closely managed by her protective mother, which may have made it hard for her to open up to the rest of the cast. Whatever the reason, that chill on set became one of the few dark clouds over what was otherwise one of television's most beloved family shows. The betrayal that changed everything for Melissa. Not long after Little House on the Prairie, Melissa's path crossed with a young aspiring actor from Syracuse named Thomas Cruise Mapother IV, better known today as Tom Cruise. At the time, he was 18, brand new to Los Angeles and chasing his Hollywood dreams. People magazine later revealed that an agent suggested he drop his last name and just go by Cruise. It stuck. When Tom and Melissa met, she was 16 and already a household name, while he was still struggling to make ends meet. Years later, Melissa talked about their short-lived romance during an interview with Andy Cohen. When asked about a comment from Cher, who once called Tom one of her best lovers, Melissa laughed and made it clear their relationship was completely innocent. They had made out, she said, but nothing more. Still, she admitted he was a surprisingly good kisser. What he lacked in fame, he also lacked in finances. Melissa revealed that she actually bought Tom his first set of dishes. Andy Cohen couldn't resist jokingly calling her his sugar mama. After that brief fling, both of them quickly moved on. Melissa's next love story would be far more serious and far more painful. She fell deeply in love with actor Rob Lowe. They first met when she was around 15, but their romance didn't officially start until she was 17. By then, Rob's star was beginning to rise fast, and their relationship quickly became a fixture in Hollywood gossip columns. Despite the ups and downs, including infidelity on both sides, their connection was strong enough that Rob eventually proposed in 1986, when Melissa was just 22. But their engagement unraveled almost as quickly as it began. When Melissa discovered she was pregnant, Rob told her he wasn't ready to be a father or a husband. The news shattered her. Their engagement was called off, and shortly after, Melissa suffered a miscarriage. In her memoir, she described the heartbreak as one of the darkest times of her life. She had lost her baby and her relationship in one devastating moment and turned to alcohol to numb the pain. Years later, on the I Choose Me with Jenny Garth podcast, Melissa reflected on that chapter with striking honesty. She and Rob had dated on and off for 6 years, from her late teens into her early 20s. Looking back, she realized just how young she had been. Despite her experience in the industry, she was still a teenager trying to navigate adult emotions. She talked about watching Rob's rapid rise to fame, the premieres, the fan attention, the chaos, and admitted she wasn't prepared for the wave of adoration that followed him everywhere. Suddenly, she found herself invisible. Fans would push past her just to get to Rob, even slipping their phone numbers into his pockets. It was overwhelming, and Melissa didn't sugarcoat how it felt. That period of her life, she said, was hard and horrible, a painful mix of young love, heartbreak, and lessons learned far too early under the glare of fame. After her breakup with Rob Lowe, Melissa Gilbert entered another whirlwind romance, this time with actor Beau Brinkman. Their relationship moved at lightning speed. They met, fell for each other fast, and just 6 weeks later, Beau proposed. The two got married in 1988 and later welcomed their son, Dakota. But what looked like a new beginning quickly turned into a stormy chapter. In her memoir, Prairie, Melissa opened up about how troubled that marriage really was. Even when they tried to reconcile after a trial separation, things only got messier. During therapy, Beau dropped a bombshell. He admitted to having a one-night stand with actress Shannon Doherty. It hit Melissa hard, especially since she'd worked with Shannon a decade earlier on Little House on the Prairie. Not long after that confession, Melissa ran into Shannon at the 1991 Emmy Awards. Shannon tried to greet her warmly, but Melissa wasn't having it. She pushed her away and confronted her about the affair. According to Melissa, Shannon's reaction was chilling, almost smug. It was a moment that left her deeply unsettled, and she decided to walk away before things escalated. Neither Beau Brinkman nor Shannon Doherty ever publicly responded to the story, choosing silence over drama. But the fallout lingered. Even years later, Melissa's sister, Sarah Gilbert, made it clear that she still held strong feelings about what happened. During an appearance on Watch What Happens Live, Sarah admitted that if she ever saw Shannon again, she wouldn't bother with words. She'd rather settle it with a punch. Clearly, that old wound hadn't healed. Things only got worse for Melissa after that. One night, not long after becoming a mother, she went downstairs to grab milk for her newborn and stumbled upon a scene straight out of a nightmare. Beau on the couch with another woman. In her memoir, she described freezing in disbelief before realizing what was happening. When Beau noticed her, he simply snapped, asking what she was looking at. Despite all the betrayal and heartbreak, Melissa later reflected that she wouldn't change a thing. She said that from the very beginning, their marriage was chaotic, driven by alcohol, insecurity, and the fact that they barely knew each other. But she also recognized that if she hadn't married Beau, she wouldn't have had her beloved son. By 1994, the couple officially divorced. But the drama didn't end there. While Melissa was vacationing in Austria with her new partner, actor Bruce Boxleitner, Beau made a shocking move. He called Child Protective Services to accuse their nanny of abusing Dakota. The claim turned out to be completely false, and the case was quickly dismissed. Still, the timing couldn't have been worse. Melissa was recovering from surgery at the time and felt humiliated when investigators showed up at her home. Even after that ordeal, Melissa struggled to regain control of her life. Her drinking worsened, and she admitted to regularly going through 2 bottles of wine a night. That dependence strained her relationship with Bruce Boxleitner, and eventually, their marriage fell apart too. Career-wise, Melissa continued to work steadily, but her projects weren't the big hits of her Little House days. Instead, she became known as the Queen of Made-for-TV movies, starring in films like Family Secrets, 1984, and Choices, 1986. She also made a cool comeback in 1992, lending her voice to Batgirl in Batman, the animated series. Still, behind the scenes, her drinking had reached a breaking point. The moment of truth came one evening when she passed out in her dog's bed while entertaining a guest. That was her wake-up call. When her son later asked her to stop drinking, it finally hit her. She needed to make a change. She joined Alcoholics Anonymous and credited the 12-step program with helping her rebuild her life. Once she got sober, Melissa began reclaiming her focus and her confidence. She also realized she wanted to step away from those small TV movies and start a new chapter in her career. When asked if she'd ever consider a reboot of Little House on the Prairie, she was clear about her answer. No, she believed the original still stood strong, airing regularly in syndication and continuing to connect with new generations. But she did return to that world in a different way. In 2008, Melissa took on the role of Ma Ingalls, the same character once played by her on-screen mother, Michael Landon's co-star Karen Grassel, in the Little House on the Prairie musical. She threw herself completely into the role, touring all over the country. But the constant travel and long performances started to take a toll. During one show, Melissa began feeling sharp pain in her back. At first, she brushed it off, thinking it would fade with rest. But the pain only got worse. She told herself that if it ever became too much to handle, she'd finally see a doctor. And eventually, that moment came. When she finally went to the hospital, the diagnosis left her speechless. The pain wasn't from a simple strain or pulled muscle. She'd been performing for months with a broken back. She was in her 40s at the time, carrying the weight of Ma Ingalls' character on stage every night, all while her own spine was fractured. When her fellow cast and crew discovered what she had been enduring in silence, they were amazed by her strength and dedication. It was the kind of grit that reminded everyone why Melissa Gilbert was still such a respected figure in entertainment. Once the musical wrapped, Melissa finally underwent surgery to repair her back. But recovery wasn't as peaceful as she'd hoped. Her marriage to Bruce Boxleitner was already strained, and his lack of empathy during her healing only widened the emotional gap. Melissa later reflected that Bruce was never one for nurturing or compassion, and she began questioning why she had accepted so little care in return for so much love. Before that surgery, Melissa had already sensed their marriage slipping. In her earlier memoir, Prairie, she admitted to having an emotional affair with one of her co-stars while filming Seduction in a small town. Though she never named him, it was clear that loneliness and alcohol played a major role in blurring her judgment. She confessed that she had poured her heart out to the wrong person, something she should have been doing with her husband instead. Melissa and Bruce did attempt to save their marriage through therapy, but the distance between them was too great. By 2011, their relationship came to an end. The divorce hit Melissa hard, sending her into a period of transformation that was as chaotic as it was revealing. Following the split, she completely reinvented herself, inside and out. She changed her appearance, bought a sports car, and started seeing a younger man. Looking back, she admitted that it was as if she'd temporarily lost her mind, trying to fill the emptiness left behind by years of emotional neglect. Experts like neuropsychologist Dr. Sanam Hafiz have explained that this kind of drastic behavior after a breakup is actually quite common. When people lose a relationship, they often lose a piece of their identity too, prompting them to make impulsive changes in an attempt to feel in control again. While understandable, it's not always the healthiest route. Dr. Hafiz advises that after major life changes, it's better to slow down, sit with the discomfort, and resist the urge to jump headfirst into a new romance or transformation. Still, Melissa doesn't regret the path she took. Every misstep, heartbreak, and reinvention helped shape her into the person she eventually became. As Dr. Hafiz put it, there's power in not judging your past self. You made choices based on what you knew at the time, and those experiences can still lead to growth. Melissa eventually made a full recovery from her back injury after getting a surgical implant. She later joked that the whole ordeal actually made her a bit shorter, but the tough times didn't end there. Her health battles were far from over. After recovering from a serious back injury, Melissa Gilbert set her sights on something bold, joining the cast of Dancing with the Stars in 2012. She was paired with a skilled Ukrainian-American professional dancer and was ready to prove that she could handle the challenge. But partway through that season, things took another frightening turn. During one of her live performances, Melissa suffered an unexpected and mysterious injury. nobody watching, neither the audience in the studio nor viewers at home, seemed to know what had just happened. Not long after, Melissa took to Twitter to clear things up, explaining that she had suffered a concussion and whiplash during her routine. Naturally, fans had a lot of questions, and soon everyone was debating exactly when and how the injury occurred. Her representative later confirmed to Access Hollywood that Melissa had hit her head on the ballroom floor, a claim supported by several of her fellow castmates. Actress and comedian Sherri Shepherd told Us Weekly that Melissa felt dizzy after hitting her head, which led the medical team to rush her to the hospital for evaluation. Singer Gavin DeGraw also shared what he saw, recalling that Melissa seemed to strike the back of her head during the dance. However, the story didn't end there. Some keen-eyed fans reviewed the footage over and over, arguing that there was no clear moment showing her head actually hitting the floor. To shed light on the confusion, health journalist Linda Carroll, co-author of The Concussion Crisis: Anatomy of a Silent Epidemic, stepped in with some important insight. She explained that it's absolutely possible to get a concussion without direct head impact. Using a powerful analogy, she described how the brain can move and collide with the skull during sudden stops, just like a passenger in a car without a seatbelt during a sudden halt. After watching the episode herself, Carroll said it wasn't hard to imagine how Melissa's injury happened. Considering the intensity of the performance and Melissa's history of spinal problems, those fast, whipping dance moves could easily have caused trauma to her neck and spine. The aftermath of that 2012 injury was serious. Melissa was diagnosed with 2 herniated discs, leading to a 3rd spinal surgery. Unfortunately, the fusion didn't heal as doctors had hoped. The hardware began to cause new complications, boring into the vertebrae above and below the surgical site, leaving her in chronic pain. And just when it seemed things couldn't get worse, another accident struck. A few months later, while renting a house, the balcony she was standing on suddenly collapsed. It was yet another shocking blow in a series of health battles that left her continuously struggling with spinal issues for years to come. At 61, Melissa Gilbert finally breaks silence on Patty Duke. Patty Duke and Melissa Gilbert, the unforgettable duo from the 1979 TV classic The Miracle Worker, found themselves sharing the screen once again years later. This time, it was for the 1993 CBS movie Family of Strangers, which aired on February 21st. Patty, who had flown in from her home in northern Idaho to work on the project, reflected on the reunion with genuine warmth. She couldn't believe more than a dozen years had passed since she and Melissa last worked together. But she said the time apart didn't matter. They quickly slipped back into that easy rhythm. She described the new film as powerful, filled with emotion, and deeply meaningful. The story itself carried plenty of dramatic weight. Melissa played a young woman who suddenly discovers she was adopted after a medical crisis forces her to search for her biological family. William Shatner stepped in as her adoptive father, the one tasked with breaking the life-changing news. From there, Melissa's character sets out to find her birth mother, who turns out to be Patty Duke's character. But that discovery only opens more wounds. The truth behind her birth is tied to trauma. Her mother was a victim of rape, and the identity of her father could be one of 5 men. Together, the 2 women embark on a painful but courageous search for the truth, forming an unbreakable bond along the way. For Patty Duke, the project was more than just another role. It was another chance to connect with Melissa, someone who understood the pressures of growing up in the spotlight. The 2 women shared a rare kind of history. Both had been famous child stars. Both had experienced adoption, though in very different ways. Patty's situation wasn't a legal one. Her managers had taken over her life, controlling everything from her career to her personal choices. Even with their shared experiences, they led very different lives. Time, distance, and lifestyle differences meant they never became extremely close, but their mutual respect and affection never wavered. What tied them together most was the miracle worker. That story, about Helen Keller, the deaf and blind child who went on to become a world-renowned author and lecturer, had been life-changing for both. Patty won an Academy Award for playing Helen Keller in the 1962 film, while years later, Melissa portrayed Keller in the 1979 TV remake, with Patty stepping into the role of Keller's teacher, Annie Sullivan. Patty often spoke fondly about that connection. She loved the intensity and trust that came with their work together. She said their long hours on set created an unspoken understanding, the kind that only seasoned performers share. Melissa, in turn, admired Patty deeply but pointed out a key difference in their childhood experiences. Her own time on Little House on the Prairie was nurturing and wholesome, shaped by Michael Landon's fatherly presence. Patty's early years, however, were the opposite, marked by control and manipulation from her managers. For Patty, the workplace was the only safe space she had growing up. Acting, in many ways, saved her. In her autobiography, Call Me Anna, she revealed how years of abuse and exploitation left lasting emotional scars, nearly breaking her completely. Yet, even through that darkness, she recognized how her professional world became her refuge. When she looked at Melissa's journey, she saw another kind of struggle. The pressure of growing up in front of cameras, with the public constantly judging every move. Still, Patty admired that neither of them seemed to carry bitterness about their fame. They had learned to live with the spotlight and take it all in stride. She also pointed out one silver lining of being a child actor: learning adult-level professionalism from a young age. That discipline, she believed, helped shape them into the resilient women they became. Patty often called Melissa a wise old soul, remembering her maturity and depth even as a teenager on the Miracle Worker set. While filming Family of Strangers in Vancouver, the two women became even closer. They stayed in neighboring hotel rooms for 4 weeks, spending late nights in bathrobes, just talking and laughing. Patty wasn't exactly sure what made their bond so special, whether it was shared pain, shared history, or just good chemistry. But she knew one thing for sure. She loved working with actors who gave their all, and Melissa was one of them. In her later years, Patty began noticing changes in how child actors were treated on set. She believed the industry had evolved, that children were generally cared for more compassionately than in her day. Still, she admitted there were moments when she couldn't stay silent. If she saw a young performer working too long or being pushed too hard, she would speak up. Her memories of her own mistreatment were too vivid to ignore. Then, in 2016, tragedy struck. Patty Duke passed away suddenly at the age of 69 from sepsis following a ruptured intestine. The loss came as a complete shock. Her family released a heartfelt statement describing her as a beloved wife, mother, artist, and humanitarian who devoted her life to helping others, especially in the field of mental health advocacy. They said she had finally found peace and that her legacy of love and compassion would live on. Melissa Gilbert was deeply affected by the news. To her, Patty, or Anna as she called her, wasn't just a co-star. She was a mentor, a teacher, and a second mother. Melissa shared how Patty had helped shape her into the woman she became, calling her one of the greatest influences in her life. In her tribute, Melissa reflected on Patty's extraordinary talent, her humor, and her strength. She praised her for not only surviving the harsh realities of child stardom, but also for transforming that pain into advocacy that changed countless lives. Patty had fought tirelessly to destigmatize mental illness, using her own struggles to help others find hope and understanding. Melissa said she would miss Patty every day, but found comfort in something Helen Keller once wrote, that the most beautiful things in the world cannot be seen or touched, only felt with the heart. And for Melissa, that was exactly what Patty Duke represented: a heart full of love, compassion, and unshakable strength.